The monitor's beep cut through the lab's silence. Daniel blinked, his eyes burning from too many sleepless hours. The graph flickered on the screen, a sequence of peaks and valleys, radio signals, common in astronomy. But something was wrong. Very wrong. He zoomed in on the spectrum. The frequency repeated with eerie precision. Rhythmic. Organic. Beats. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. This can't be. Hey, is anyone else seeing this? Sophie's chair creaked as she turned, frowning at the monitor. What is it now? Another random pulse? No. His voice faltered. He swallowed hard. This is a heartbeat. Sophie blinked, then laughed, shaking her head. Oh, come on. A heartbeat from space? Seriously, Daniel. He didn't respond. He only increased the signal's intensity. The repetition grew clearer. Each pulse echoed through the lab like a ghostly whisper. Sophie stopped smiling. This is a mistake, right? Daniel didn't blink anymore. The graph danced on the screen, marking the precise rhythm of life, but not human life. Then, the signal changed. The graph trembled, shifting its pattern. The invisible heart beat stronger, faster. At that exact moment, an alarm blared from the room's radio. Daniel jumped from his chair. Sophie's eyes widened. The base operator's trembling voice echoed through the lab. There's been an accident. A building collapsed downtown. A heavy silence fell over the room. The graph still pulsed, only now, with a new rhythm, as if it was reacting. Night crept over the Hale Observatory, a lone dome atop a mountain. Above, the stars shimmered, indifferent to the small team working under their eternal watch. Inside the lab, the atmosphere was different. Daniel scanned the transmission code, searching for a logical explanation for what they had just picked up. But logic didn't seem interested that night. Behind him, Sophie chewed on the tip of a pen, her eyes fixed on the monitor. Maybe it's an echo from some terrestrial signal, she suggested, though she didn't sound convinced. Then why would it change at the exact moment of a tragedy? Daniel shot back without turning around. Sophie sighed, crossing her arms. The radio was still on, and the base operator's voice continued narrating the disaster. An unexpected collapse in the city center. Dozens of victims. At the nearby table, Dr. Howard Ellison, the head of research, flipped through his notes, barely hiding his skepticism. We're not here to chase coincidences, he said firmly. Strange signals come and go. You know that, Daniel? Daniel pressed his lips together. Yes, he knew. But this wasn't just any signal. The pattern kept repeating. Whatever was transmitting that frequency seemed alive. And more than that, it seemed to be reacting. Sophie broke the silence. What if... She hesitated, choosing her words. What if someone's trying to tell us something? Ellison let out a quiet chuckle. Who? Tiny aliens tapping their feet? Daniel didn't smile. I want to check the records of the last unusual signals we picked up, he said, ignoring his boss's sarcasm. Ellison sighed, exhausted. As long as it doesn't delay the rest of the research, do what you want. But don't waste your time chasing ghosts, Daniel. The chief left the room, leaving just the two of them in front of the monitor. Sophie turned to him. You're really going after this? Daniel didn't answer right away. He looked at the screen, watching the frequency pulse slowly. Then, he nodded. I am. The coffee was cold. Daniel didn't even remember when he had poured it. The lab clock read 3:42 a.m. Sophie had already gone to bed. Dr. Ellison hadn't bothered to check on his progress. But Daniel was still there, his sleep-deprived eyes bloodshot, fixed on the computer screen. Cosmic signals were unpredictable. They could come from pulsars, quasars, even interference from Earth's satellites. But this one? This one followed a biological pattern. He had spent the last few minutes cross-referencing records, checking archived frequencies, searching for any other moment when something similar had occurred. And he found it. 5 days ago. An identical signal, slightly different in rhythm. On the same day, an earthquake struck the coast of Japan. Another, 2 weeks before that. At the exact time, a bridge collapsed in New York. Daniel's throat went dry. These weren't coincidences. With a trembling hand, he dug deeper into the archive of anomalous signals. The list grew. 2018. A tsunami devastates Indonesia. A pulse appears at the Hale Observatory in Chile. 2019. The Haiti earthquake. Another pulse, recorded in Germany. 2020. The towers fall in New York. The Arecibo radio telescope picks up a powerful signal, ignored at the time. The pattern had always been there. Always. Daniel pushed back from the screen, his heart pounding. Someone knew when disasters were going to happen, and they were trying to warn them. Or worse, someone was causing them. Behind him, the emergency radio crackled. A transmission broke the lab's silence. "We have a massive fire in Central Valley. Hundreds of people missing." Daniel froze. On the screen, the signal shifted again. Daniel barely felt the weight of his own body as he typed furiously. The forgotten coffee beside the keyboard sat untouched, growing cold. There was a message inside the signal. The radio wave pattern wasn't just a reflection of events on Earth. There was a hidden mathematical structure within the frequency. He ran an advanced spectral analysis. The graph flickered, revealing a new pattern embedded in the signal. Numbers. Daniel frowned. Latitude. Longitude. His blood ran cold. He entered the coordinates into a map. A blinking point appeared on the screen. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The Central Valley fire. The same one that had started just minutes ago. The message was predicting the tragedies. His hands trembled over the keyboard. What if he checked the previous signals? He typed quickly, cross-referencing past patterns. With each revealed coordinate, a chill ran down his spine. Every major disaster from recent years was there, marked within the signal, before they happened. The air in the lab felt heavier. Daniel pressed his temples. This can't be right. But it was. And then he saw the last sequence of numbers, a new coordinate, a new tragedy. He entered the numbers into the map, his heart pounding. The marker appeared. The point was directly over Hale Observatory. Daniel's chair screeched as he jumped to his feet. The signal wasn't just predicting tragedies, it was warning them that the next one was already on its way. Behind him, the emergency radio crackled again. "We've detected abnormal seismic activity in the mountain region. Possible landslide risk." A terrible silence fell over the lab. Daniel slowly turned back to the screen. The signal pulsed. Faster. As if it were trying to warn him. The radio kept crackling. The base operator's voice was unsteady. "I repeat. Abnormal seismic activity detected in the Hale Observatory region. Assessing landslide risk." Daniel stared at the screen. The signal was pulsing too fast. The pattern had shifted. Something was different. The ground trembled beneath his feet. Not strong, but noticeable. Shit. He spun around, kicking his chair back. He had to get out. Racing down the dimly lit hallway, he shoved open the dormitory door. Sophie was lying down, an arm over her eyes. "Get up! Now!" She jolted awake, blinking at him, groggy. "Daniel? What?" "No time. The signal. It's predicting this. The observatory is next." Sophie sat up suddenly. "What?" The whole building shook. Harder this time. Objects tumbled off the shelves. Lights flickered. Sophie's eyes widened. "Shit!" Daniel grabbed her arm, practically dragging her out of the room. The lab was already in chaos. Equipment toppled, monitors flashing. They sprinted down the narrow hallway. "What about Ellison?" Sophie shouted. Daniel hesitated. The chief was still in his quarters. Another tremor. Stronger. "Damn it! Get to the car. I'll get him." Sophie stared at him for a second, then nodded and bolted for the exit. Daniel turned and ran down the other corridor. If Ellison didn't get out now, he'd die here. The dormitory door was slightly open. Daniel shoved it hard. Ellison was sitting on his bed, dazed, rubbing his eyes. "What the hell is— We have to go! Now!" Another tremor. Daniel nearly lost his balance. This time, he heard something crack. A fissure snaked across the ceiling. "Move!" He grabbed Ellison's arm. There was no time to explain. They ran down the corridor just as an explosion erupted from the back of the observatory. The generator had blown. The ceiling groaned. Daniel knew what came next. Collapse. The sound of concrete splitting roared behind them. A cloud of dust swallowed the hallway. "Go!" They burst through the exit just as the roof caved in behind them. Daniel coughed, dragging Ellison forward. Sophie was already in the car, honking frantically. They dove inside. "Go, go, go!" Daniel shouted. Sophie threw the car into gear and floored it. The observatory disappeared in the rearview mirror. And then, the mountain came down. The winding road snaked down the mountain, but no one in the car was looking ahead. All eyes were locked on the rearview mirror. Hale Observatory, the place where they had spent years of their lives, was gone. Only a dense cloud of dust remained, swirling at the mountain's peak like a ghostly storm. Moonlight illuminated the scattered wreckage, like the bones of a fallen giant. No one spoke, until Sophie broke the silence. That wasn't natural. Daniel gripped the steering wheel tightly. His hands were slick with sweat. The car radio was still crackling, looping the emergency alert. "We have to tell someone." Sophie's voice was shaky. "The signal, the message. If we have more time, we can..." "We can what?" Ellison cut in. His voice was hoarse, frightened. "Don't you get it? Someone wanted this." The car fell silent. Daniel glanced at him through the rearview mirror. Ellison was staring at the distant dust cloud. That signal wasn't a warning. Sophie turned to him, confused. "What do you mean?" Ellison ran a hand through his disheveled hair. There was something dark in his expression. "When you hear a call, what do? Silence." Daniel's heartbeat pounded in his ears. He was starting to understand. Ellison swallowed hard. "You answer." The car rounded a bend, descending another stretch of the mountain. But then, the radio crackled. A new transmission began. A chill ran down Daniel's spine. This time, it wasn't the usual pulsing signal. It was a voice, low, weak, but human. And it said only one thing: "They are here." The entire car plunged into a deathly silence. The radio crackled once more. Then, absolute stillness. Outside, the stars kept shining. The car rolled on in silence. No one spoke. No one breathed too loudly. The radio was dead now. No static, no signal. Just a strange, heavy emptiness. Daniel felt his heartbeat thudding in the same rhythm he had seen on the screen hours earlier. The same rhythm as the signal. Ellison stared blankly at the road, but his mind was elsewhere. Sophie clutched her own arm, as if trying to feel that she was still there. Then Daniel spoke, eyes never leaving the road. "We heard it, didn't we?" No one answered, but they all knew. They had heard it, and they had understood. The radio had gone silent because the call had been answered. Ellison took a deep breath. "What do we do now?" Daniel opened his mouth to reply, but stopped. Outside, the stars flickered. Not like usual, not like a natural shimmer in the sky, but in a sequence. Daniel's stomach dropped. The signal had never come from deep space. It had come from much, much closer. The headlights swept around a sharp curve in the road. The car turned, and all three of them saw something that shouldn't be there. Sophie's eyes widened. Ellison whispered, "Oh my God." Barely a breath. Daniel held his breath, because there, in the middle of the road, someone was waiting for them. The signal was received. The message was delivered. But the question remains, what if the universe wasn't trying to warn us, but to prepare us? What do you think really happened? Did the signal come from deep space, or from something already among us? Who, or what, was waiting for them at the end of the road? Drop your thoughts in the comments and share your theory, but be careful. They might be listening too. If you enjoyed this story, follow for more mysteries and conspiracies that will make you look at the stars in a whole new way.